Welcome to Travel Secrets with me, Tanya Rose, the podcast sharing wisdom for fellow travellers. Each week, I ask my guests to reveal their 6 travel secrets and the trips and holidays that uncover them. My guest today is my great friend Santa Montefiore. Santa is an author whose books have been translated into more than 25 languages and have sold more than 6 million copies worldwide. Santa and I have known each other for over 30 years. We met at Sandringham many, many years ago when we were wee sprogs.
Quite fun to drop that. How many people have met at Sandringham?
Exactly. Simon Sebag Montefiore, your husband, is a historian.
That's
who
right.
has written books about the world. So I'm sure your travel secrets are very different from his. I'm sure that he wants to talk about very different things when I interview him.
Oh, he will.
But I'm really excited to be listening to you and for you to be sharing your 6 travel secrets.
Great.
So you've written books set abroad with a travel connection.
Yeah.
For example, An Italian Girl in Brooklyn, The Temptations of Gracie, The Devon Chronicles, which I adored. How important is it for you to go to those places when you're writing?
Immensely important. I will say that I rely very much on places that I've already been to, because now married with children, it's very hard for me to go and, let's say, decamp to Spain, for example, for 3 months to soak up the atmosphere and the culture and all of that. I simply wouldn't have the time to do that. So I have to rely on places that I know. Italy, I spent loads of time there as a child, holidays. I lived in Italy after studying Spanish and Italian at university, and I spent 6 months in Milan. I speak the language, I understand the culture. So Italy is a place that I write about a lot. Argentina, I lived in Argentina. Chile, my cousins are all in Chile. My mother is Anglo-Argentine. Her family all live in Chile now, and there are loads of them. So I spent a lot of time in South America. So I rely very much on places where I've been to. You have to get under the skin, not only of the culture in terms of the way the people are, but the smell. A lot of writing, in the way I write, in order to create a sense of place, is to appeal to the senses. So you write about the smells, the sounds, the taste, the feeling of a place. So you have to know what birds there are, what they sound like, what the place smells like, the eucalyptus trees, the jasmine. Each country has its own very particular smell, for example. So you need to know all of that. You have to be in the country to discover that. You can't just Google it. So I rely on places that I've been to a lot.
I love that. And what about Ireland? I mean, the Devon Chronicles, that was very based in Ireland and Irish.
Yeah. So I decided to write about Ireland, actually, because after 5 books based in Argentina and Chile and then in Italy, I'd done so much sort of Mediterranean tones, and those, it's very fragrant, very warm, very balmy, you know, the eucalyptus trees and the gardenia and that very heady, sensual smells of those Latin countries. I wanted something different. For me as a writer, I want to challenge myself with every book that I write, and I get bored very quickly if I find myself repeating things. So I thought, okay, where can I go to next in my book that is going to give me something totally different to write about? And Ireland popped into my head. My grandfather was Irish. I'd spent holidays in Connemara as a child, and it couldn't be more different. It's very gothic. It's very the hills, the mist, the frost, the heather, the drizzle. I mean, there's something wonderfully mystical and magical about Ireland. So I wrote Secrets of the Lighthouse, which is based in Connemara, very much evoking memories of my childhood holidays there. And then the Devons, I was asked to write 3 books by my publisher, Simon & Schuster. And instead of writing 3 very different stories, my husband suggested, why don't you write a trilogy? Well, Julian Fellows, who is a friend of mine, had once said, have any of your books been made into movies? And I'd said, no, sadly not yet. He goes, darling, you must think of something that rolls. Well, of course, Downton Abbey rolls from season to season. My books were all standalone. So I took his advice, and with my husband suggesting a trilogy, I thought, okay, well, that'll roll. So The Devils now is 6 books. 6 is yet to come out, but it's coming out shortly.
Oh, I hope we'll see a film or a TV series.
I'd love a TV series, but it rolls, you see. And then, of course, you know, it starts in 1900, it goes up into the 80s, and it goes to South Africa, New York. It's a huge it's a huge canvas. But again, travel, really important. You have to go to the places. You have to get under the skin of these places. And Ireland is just magical.
I love what you say about getting under the skin of a destination, because I always say, if you really want to travel properly, you need to get under the skin of that destination and travel like a local.
Yes, which is why speaking the language is so important. So I speak Spanish and Italian, and I defend myself in French. But when you are with a group, for example, of South Americans, and you're all chatting together and you're all speaking in the same language, then you're part of the group, you're part of their world. If you're speaking English and everyone has to change their language for you, then you're not really getting to know them in their comfort zone. Do you know what I mean? They're changing their world to suit you rather than you just fitting into their world. And it makes, I don't know, it makes it much easier.
Well, good for you that you speak all those languages.
Oh, I love speaking languages.
Fantastic.
I love speaking languages. And I love writing about foreign places. England, I always write about England too. Most of my books that are based in Italy or France or South America are rooted in England. So I write about the two because people are so different. You get the very phlegmatic, unemotional sort of English. The eccentric English people are the best to write about, you know, those, especially old people, because the English really mature very well, like a fabulous wine. They become more eccentric, especially the really posh ones. I based one of my characters on a history of art teacher who taught me at Sherborne. He was in his 70s. He was called Mr. Robertson, taught history of art, was Scottish, but believed himself to be Italian. So he talked with this full Italian accent like that. And you would come into the room and go, oh, what joy, I have 20 beautiful virgins to teach today. And he'd shimmy about. And he was hilarious. And I put him in one of my books. And so many people wrote to me afterwards saying they just loved his character, because those English people, you just don't get them abroad.
Did he recognize himself? I wonder if
Do you know,
ever
he
read
died
it?
sadly.
Oh.
But the music teacher who absolutely loved him, called Augusta Miller, who herself is a wonderful eccentric and always wants to be put in my books. I've used her name actually in the Deverells, Augusta. She recognized him and thought, you know, it was fabulous. It was written really in homage to him because he was just such a great inspiration to me. But foreigner, you know, the Italians, the French, the South Americans, they're different. They have their own eccentricities, but they're very, very different. And so it's really fun to write about the two different cultures.
Fantastic. Shall we get into your travel secrets?
Okay, I don't think they're very secret.
Oh,
but
I
I'll
know, but
try
no,
and-
just tell me more. What memory do you have of a trip that's very poignant to you and maybe even changed your life?
Well, Argentina definitely changed my life. I was 18, nearly 19 years old. I went out to teach these 3 children to speak English. The father, this wonderful man called Santiago Soldati, he had 5 brothers and sisters, 4 brothers and sisters, they were 5. They all lived on this beautiful estancia on the Pampa of Argentina. They had, 20 nephews and nieces, all my age. They shared the polo fields and the polo ponies and the swimming pool and the tennis court, yet they all had houses. The land is as flat as a ginger nut biscuit. It's really, really beautiful. And Santiago was best friends with my godfather, who was Mexican. And so he arranged it that during my gap year between school and university, I'd go out and work for him. Now, the mother, who is Finnish, she wanted her children to say bird, not bird, because all the Argentines, when they learn English, they speak with American accents. So I came out rather like Mary Poppins to teach them to say bird, not bird. And I had the most incredible time. I fell in love, obviously. He was a polo player. He was the nephew of Eva and Santi Soldati's nephew. And the first thing Eva said to me pretty much was, you can fall in love with any of my nephews. She says, I have about 10 of them, but don't go near Miguelito. Whatever you do,
player.
don't go near Miguelito. They were all polo players, actually. Recreationally, they didn't play professionally. But for them, playing polo was like playing football for us. They just take off their shirts and jump on a pony and
Off they'd go with their 6 polo ponies.
Yeah, absolutely, in the afternoons. And everybody would sort of congregate on the bonnets of cars, and the music would be playing. And it was a real scene, and it was very glamorous, but very laid back, not at all how you'd imagine it to be over here where it's very formal. I mean, it was really informal and very cool out there. Anyway, so she said, don't go near Miguelito, because of course he had a girlfriend in every corner of Buenos Aires, and there are many corners in Buenos Aires. But of course, and he was the first person I talked to when, all the young people got together. They were all so good looking, so glossy and suntanned with this sort of tousled sun-bleached hair. You know, they were really good-looking people. And yet Miguelito wasn't very good-looking. Oh, he was lethal. So he was the first person I talked to because he wasn't intimidating like the others. So I started talking to him. Little did I know that he was the most lethal of all of them. And of course, I fell madly in love with him. He was, he was terrible in that he just treated women so badly because he had so many of them. And so it was a sort of cat and mouse game for about 6 months, which was fabulous. I enjoyed every minute of it. And then when I did have a relationship, a proper relationship with an Argentine, my first boyfriend, he was awful. He was very controlling. He was a computer analyst, and he is the anti-hero in my second novel, The Butterfly Box.
Oh, that's
So yes, I don't think
hilarious.
he ever read it. I'm sure he would have recognized himself and he wouldn't have liked himself at all. But anyway, Argentina for me was a massive experience. I learnt the language. I spoke the language very well, obviously, after a year. And I really got under the skin of the country. I became part of the family. I knew the people who worked in the shops on the street corners and the people who ran the cafes. And I felt I really belonged there. And then I left and went to university for a year in England. And when I went back to Argentina that October, everything had changed. A lot of the people that I'd hung out with had moved on. They didn't do the same jobs. A lot of the cousins that I'd hung out with, who were my friends, had gone to study in America or in Europe. And I felt that the place was the same, but I felt I'd been left behind, that everybody had moved on, and I wanted everything to be exactly the same. I wanted to relive that experience I'd had. And it was almost like being at the station and the train had gone, leaving me on the platform alone. And I felt really displaced. And I didn't have a job because I was just going out for 3 weeks during the university holidays. And I had nothing to do. And so I was a tourist, which was a very different thing to actually having a job and a purpose to get up every morning and do something. So it was that sense of having lost something really precious that inspired my first novel, Meet Me Under the Ombu Tree, which is very autobiographical in its feelings, not in the story, because it goes back into the 50s and things like that. But very much that feeling of having lost something very precious was the central focal point of my plot, really.
I remember you giving me that book when you first wrote it. I mean, it was such a long time ago, and loving it because it really felt to me that you just loved that country so
Yes.
much.
Well, I read Gabriel Garcia's Love in the Time of Cholera on holiday as I was researching or really working out how to write that book. And I was so struck with the sense of place that he created. And I worked out how he did it. It's that you could smell the lavender and the orange blossom and the languor of the siesta time because of the heaviness in the air. And he really captivated that sense of place through the senses. And so I did that with Meet Me Under the Ombu Tree, with the eucalyptus trees and the jasmine and the humidity, and the sense of place is created through this salt of smell and sound.
So travel's so important to who you've become as this amazing author,
Oh,
really,
without
isn't it?
question. I mean, foreign places, most of my books are inspired by hotels I've been to, you know, because wherever I go in the world, whether it's Italy or France, or I stay in hotels. And in fact, one of the hotels I stayed in, Devon, Endsleigh, which is owned by Olga Polizzi, which was the Duchess of Bedford's cottage. It was a sort of whimsy back in the day, and now it's a most wonderful, gorgeous hotel. I was so inspired when I went there that I created a whole book around it. Sea of Lost Love is based at Endsleigh. Of course, I call it something different. But it is lovely to go to a place and to be inspired and then to use that place because you know it. You know where the rooms are. You know where the stairs are. You don't have to create it. It's there.
Did you tell Olga that?
Yes, I did.
I bet
In
she
fact,
was delighted.
I acknowledge her in the beginning of the book. I thank her because I placed it by the sea. It's not by the sea. Her hotel, Transanton, is by the sea. So it's kind of a combination of those two hotels.
Fantastic. Let's go on to Travel Secret 2. Your most unexpected experience, a memory of a holiday where you couldn't have planned it, or a cultural moment that you didn't know was going to happen, or something shocking or surprising.
Terrible. So my sister, Tara, known in her day as Tara PT, she did some PR for this man who had a holiday resort in Bali. And she was given the use of this beautiful villa on top of a hill. And I remember seeing photographs of it. And it had its own butler, its own chef, its own maids, you name it. It was all singing, all dancing. And Tara used to say that it was hers. It wasn't hers. I mean, it was typical her to exaggerate like that. So she said, "Oh, Santa, why don't you and the children," I mean, the children were little. They were, I don't know, 10 and 8 and 10 or something. And she said, why don't you and the children go to my house in Bali? You can take my house. So we thought this was a really great idea. And because it was sort of off season, we got very inexpensive tickets to fly there. And she said, you can have the place for free, very generously giving it to us. So we arrive in Bali, really long flight. You stop in Singapore and then you fly on. Anyway, we were all exhausted. And it's pouring with rain. And we turn up to this driveway in the pouring rain, and the car suddenly goes lurch, lurch, lurch through huge potholes. So I'm thinking, if this is the driveway to the hotel and it's plagued with potholes, what the hell is the
going to
hotel?
find?
What is it going to look like? I was expecting beautiful gates like in Mauritius. When we used to go and stay at the Saint Géran in Mauritius, you're arriving in a really special place because of the driveway. This was pothole galore. And we arrive at this little shack with this desk and a woman sitting behind this desk. Literally a table in a shack. And it can't be the reception. It is the reception. So we get out in the pouring rain with all our luggage, and we're taken in a golf buggy, not to Tara's splendid villa, because as it turns out, no surprise, it's not her splendid villa.
And it's been
and
let
it's
to someone
Russian oligarch's splendid villa that's just been lent to her. And we are taken to this very ordinary villa. It could be quite a nice villa. If the weather had been nice, it might have been quite nice. But it rained, I think, for the whole time we were there. We booked it for about 14 days. We lasted 5 days because not only was everything like my phone and other devices were stolen from the villa. Yes, but the fridge broke, the blinds broke, the bed broke. Everything, it was so shambolic. And the first morning we went to what we thought would be a lovely restaurant to have breakfast. It was like something you'd find at Gatwick Airport, with sort of plastic tables and chairs, and it was awful. The monkeys, I adored the monkeys. My daughter hates monkeys. So there were monkeys everywhere and she hated the monkeys. The monkeys for me was a highlight. And then the beach, because there'd been some sort of typhoon or something the week before, had been swept away. So when we went down in this little vernacular thing, little cable car thing, down to the beach, the sight of the beach, which had been washed away, it was so awful. The whole thing was just so shambolic. So we turned round after 5 days and came home.
Oh, you actually came back? You didn't check in somewhere else?
No, we didn't. We went for dinner at the Banyan Tree, which was really lovely. Oh, when I arrived at that driveway,
You thought,
I
wish
I was here.
Do you remember what it was called, the place you went?
I do, but do you think I mention it? Isn't that a bit mean? Is it a bit mean to say? It might be one of those places that when the beach is all intact and the weather's nice,
And you get the
and
villa.
people don't steal your telephone and your watch out of your villa. Yes.
Oh, that's absolutely hilarious.
It was a long time ago. It was about sort of 15 years ago.
Let's talk about an underrated experience then. That was obviously an overrated and a terrible one. Have you been somewhere that you actually thought would be okay but not spectacular, that you were absolutely blown away by?
I've been to lots of places like that, actually. The Amangiri in Utah is one of those places where I hated Vegas. And we were in Vegas for a couple of nights before, and then we drove off. And I, was very much looking forward to seeing those wonderful Mesa Mountains. It's so prehistoric. So I knew that was going to be pretty spectacular, but really nothing could have prepared me for the hotel itself, which is so beautifully blended into nature with these huge doors and windows. It's all open, so you feel you're part of the scenery. I thought that was magical.
I haven't been to Amangiri, but I know the Henkels who own it.
Yeah.
And one of my favourite hotels in the world is the other hotel they own, Dunton Hot
I
Springs.
haven't been there, but I want to go there because
It's so wonderful. I mean,
Yes.
it's very basic but very luxurious. It's sort of all Ralph Lauren.
I know, I was about to say,
log
it's very
cabins.
Ralph Lauren, which is so
So gorgeous. I think they've only got
passion.
14 log cabins, and it took me like 2 days to get there because it's up in Colorado. And when I got there and I was having supper with them, the altitude was so high that I actually fainted. And it was so embarrassing. I thought, they don't know me, these people, and they're going to be new clients, and they're probably going to think I'm drunk on one glass of wine. But they actually looked at me and went, oh, it happens all the time.
Yeah, I'm sure they're used to it. But I've seen photographs obviously after having been to the Amangiri, we then looked at their other hotel, and they're friends of ours too. And it just looks sumptuous. But I love that sort of Navajo, Native American Indian sort of look with all the
It's where
rugs
Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid hid out when they robbed the bank in Telluride.
Fantastic.
Fabulous.
Fantastic.
But Amangiri is very spiritual as well. And I know that you have a very spiritual side too, don't you? So you must have connected with that.
Funnily enough, funny you should say that, because my sister died in the year we went out to Utah. And she died in the February. And I'm psychic. I've always seen spirits. And she had actually come to me in July. It sounds weird, but in the night, that's when I see them. She was sitting by my bed and I had a wonderful moment with her. But when I drove out to Utah, all the way in the car, I just heard this voice repeating, Santa, 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 like that, like a song in my head. And I didn't think it was her. I just went with it. I can't remember what I was really thinking, but I just remember having that voice in my head. And the minute we got there, I said, I just want to go and sit on the top of that Mesa Mountain. The sun was going down and I just felt I needed to meditate. And I went and sat up there. And the minute I closed my eyes and I went into that state, she appeared. And I had a very profound moment with her there. As you say, it is a very high energy, high vibration place, very spiritual, very ancient. And I think Tara, having been in rehab in Arizona, she'd had a spiritual moment there herself. Sadly, it didn't last because her life didn't. It went downhill after that. But she did have a moment where I think she could have turned her life around after that Arizona moment. And I think maybe we connected because of that. But I had a very profound moment with her at the Amangiri Hotel on that Mesa Mountain. And it's very special to me because of that. And I really want to go back.
Yeah, I definitely want to go. One on my bucket list, definitely. I know that food and drink is very important in your family life. And I know that you've told me about places that you've been to where the food hasn't been good enough and so it spoiled the holiday. But have you got any sort of travel secrets around food?
Cambodia is a place that really springs to mind. I mean, both Vietnam and Cambodia, we had the most fantastic trip. The street food in Vietnam was fantastic. And we went round with our guide and sat on the pavement and had various dishes really in the street, which was lovely. But the place that really struck me as very special was somewhere in Cambodia where we bicycled to. So we bicycled through these paddy fields and we got to this farm and they grow all their own stuff. I mean, really spectacular farm. And we cooked our own food. So it was a cookery lesson and being shown around a farm. And it was the most delicious. Everything was vegetarian. It was all lettuces and goodness knows what. And we put on our aprons and our chef's hat and they showed us how to do it. And it was fantastic. But goodness, the food was so delicious. And my children still to this day talk about it. I wish we could go back. Do you remember that lunch we had? And we cooked it ourselves. And I think we were really hungry having bicycled there. And it was very hot. So we're already longing to eat. So it even tastes better because you're hungry. It was
fantastic.
Absolutely delicious.
Drinks, bars, any new things on the horizon?
Well, the Peninsula Hotel bar, I would say, that's pretty special. And I'm not joking. Not only are the views stunning, but the service is unbelievable. In fact, I had dinner there very recently with some friends. And because it was early, we decided to go up and have cocktails upstairs after dinner. And when I went upstairs, you can't book the bar. So I was saying to my friends as we went up, gosh, it's so popular, I hope we'll get a table. And as I walked up to the girl at reception, I said, oh, might you have a table? She said, Mrs. Montefiore, please let me show you to your table. I couldn't believe it. So we all sat at this lovely table with stunning views over London and had cocktails, and it was delicious. I do like a cocktail. I like a martini or a margarita. And as a family, we're very into our cocktails. So wherever we go, wherever in the world, and we love gorgeous hotels, the bar is a very important place for us.
And which cocktail did you have on the rooftop of the peninsula?
That's a very good question. It would have been a margarita type cocktail, something lemony.
Lovely.
I can't remember exactly what it was because I probably didn't ask for a margarita. They probably had a menu of delicious special things that they make that have their own names, but it was definitely a lemony something. Lemony something.
I shall be going hot-footing it up there after this podcast. So let's go on to your best travel secret and a place that you've been traveling to often or that really means something to you. I know where I think you're going to choose, but let's see if I'm right.
Okay, so I grew up skiing a lot in Switzerland. My father's mother was Swiss ski champion, and his father was a British Olympic skier. So the two of them met skiing. And my grandmother had always skied in cloisters. Their children, my father and his siblings, were. They spent a lot of their time out there. And then my sister, years later, bought an apartment there, which now I own. So it's very special to me because it was a very special place for her. It's a very special place for our family. My father is a farmer, so we never went away in the summer during the harvest. We always went in the winter. And as far as I can remember, we just spent most of our time in Switzerland during those winter months. So it's very special for me. My travel secret would be my brother's company, PT Ski. It's a very personal, very small company where they pick you up from the airport, they drive you up to cloisters, they organize your hotels, your ski passes, your restaurants, your training, your off-piste guides, your ice skating, your shopping, whatever you want to do, they'll organize it for you.
Everyone that I've sent to him has had the most amazing time. So I
Yes.
hugely agree with what you're saying.
Well, I think because they've kept it very small, so it's very much a family organization. And sometimes, for example, during half term, when lots of families go out with their children, my brother recruits a lot of reps to help him. And most of my family, my cousins, they all come out and do those 2 weeks, pieced hosting, helping with the organization and the training, things like that. So it's very much a family business.
I think your family's very well associated with cloisters. I mean, your mother famously was in the avalanche in the 80s with the Prince of Wales, then the King now, and she was in the hospital there for months, wasn't she?
Yeah, so she came down in that avalanche in 1988, and she was skiing with my father, the Prince of Wales, the ski guide Bruno Sprecher, and sadly, the Prince of Wales is a quarry who was killed, Hugh Lindsay. And she was in Davos Hospital for about 4 months, I think, after that. And that changed her life massively. But my grandfather died in a ski training and is buried in cloisters. He died, I think, in his early 30s, like he was 32 or something. And my grandmother still continued to go to cloisters. It's a special place for our family. And maybe she wanted to remain close to him because he was buried there and that's where he died.
And your mother still goes back
and
and,
my mother
skied after that,
my
didn't
mother
she?
skied after that, and it was always quite funny for us going up the cable car because you can see that on the left is the Vang, which is the steepest marked run in cloisters, but it's off-piste, it's not pisted. And everybody assumed that that's where the accident had happened. So people would all be leaning out that side going, oh, the Vang, Prince of Wales, and I could hear them all chatting. Actually, it was on the other side, on the Hagleymat, the right-hand side. And it just used to amuse me that everybody got everything wrong. But
Did you say no, you got it wrong? No,
yeah,
no,
I kind of wanted to say,
Wanted
actually, it was
to.
my mother and you got it wrong. Yes, so from their chalet, they rented a chalet all those years. And from the window there, my mother was able to see where she came down, where Hugh Lindsay was killed, because it's the Gotchana Mountain, it faces the village. And yet still, my family have always gone out. It didn't stop them.
No,
It was a
lovely.
tragedy that happened, but I think it's just such a special place for us as a family for many, many reasons. That it's home. So that's special to
Well,
me.
I'm so pleased to hear that you still go back and you love it. And actually, to conclude this podcast, I asked everyone to bring a photograph and to show the photograph and to describe what that photograph or those photographs mean to you and how travel has impacted you and your family.
So I have taken this out of an old album of terrible 1980s onesie ski suits. I'm wearing a turquoise ski suit with what looks like a sort of fox's tail hanging off my belt. I mean, really hideous. The style back then, I mean, there really was no style. My sister Tara is wearing a ski suit that I think was from C&A, and Diana, Princess of Wales, had the same ski suit. And it was the time when my parents were skiing with the Prince of Wales and Diana was there and Fergie and Andrew were there as well. They were all in a chalet. And because it was our half term, we came out as well because my parents never left us for half terms. We were always, with them. So we came out as well, which was a big treat for us because in those days, we wouldn't normally have gone on a ski trip like that. And I remember my mother being slightly anxious because she'd seen that Diana was wearing the same ski suit. And she was worried that, with Tara wearing the same ski suit as her, it might be a bit embarrassing. But Diana could not have been more charming and more sweet about it, and posed for photographs next to Tara.
I love the fact that it was from CNA.
Yes, it was.
That's
It was
brilliant.
from CNA. It was a really inexpensive, very simple suit. But, when you Google Diana, she's wearing that ski suit. And of course, with her long legs and being 5'11", she looked incredibly elegant, my sister.
Well, I love those photographs. And I think you look fantastic, even if you have got
fox's tail
fox's
around
tail
my
around
belt.
you.
I know, and the horrible white belt. And in those days, of course, you didn't wear helmets. So it was the headband era. And yeah, the wind in your hair and all of that. And I do remember in those days, because I wanted to look elegant, it was all about the look. I remember wearing, a shirt and an open, you'd ski with your top sort of slightly open, with your headband on. It was freezing cold, and you wear sunglasses and your head would freeze as you'd ski down. Now, thank God, with the helmets, it's all about being warm.
Absolutely.
I really don't care.
It was all about the look and the lip gloss.
Yes, absolutely.
To look good for the skiing instructors.
Yes, and freezing. And the ski instructors, by the way, never looked as good off the slopes as they did on the slopes.
They never
I
did.
lost my heart to quite a few ski instructors. Then at the party in the evening, you'd see them in the nightclub.
Totally agree.
Always a disappointment.
Always a disappointment. Santa, thank you so much for joining me. It has been such a delight, such a privilege, and such fun. I feel like I'm living in those books because I can literally smell and feel everything you write. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. It's been really fun talking to you, so thank you.